Welcome back. I'm Tom Hewitt, and this is News 13's On the Election. I'm here with Janice Golub, who's running for Borough Assembly. And Janice, you've run for public office before, but this is your first time, as far as I can remember, running for Borough Assembly. Give us a little bit about your background and why you chose to run for this seat.
Yes, sir. I think it's really important, a critical time in our borough's composition right now for what the Assembly is made up. I did run for State House last year, as you suggested. I ran for the North Pole seat, and it's just a different playing field this time. I mean, the borough's a little bigger. I mean, the borough's the size of New Jersey, so it's a little different than just running for a House district. But I think we have so many critical issues right now. That's one reason why I want to run for Borough Assembly. We're looking at our high heating costs. We're looking at people possibly leaving the borough because the cost of living is too high for them to live here. And I want to see what we can do to mitigate some of those circumstances, and also work with our military too. The military is something that's really near and dear to my heart because I'm an Army officer, and then I look at what's happening with Eielson Air Force Base, and I want to do what I can too to keep Eielson here.
The Borough Assembly was instrumental, speaking of energy issues, in creating the interior gas utility that's currently vying along with Fairbanks Natural Gas to become the regulated carrier for natural gas outside the city of Fairbanks. And a lot of folks who support FNG's bid are saying that having that interior gas utility bid in there is somehow slowing down the process of getting gas to Fairbanks, or that it could, and that they want to get gas here as soon as possible. Do you support the creation of the interior gas utility and the work that they're doing?
I do. I think having the IGU is a really good idea. What's the joke? It's always been, 50 years we've been waiting for a gas line. If we would have built that gas line 50 years ago, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in right now. We would have, lower energy costs. We would have our military bases would be on the grid and not having their own power plants, which is unheard of. In the lower 48, all the military bases are on the grid. They don't have their own power plants. So if we can save not only our energy costs, but costs for the military as well, that's one thing that would be really key to keeping them here and lowering their expenses as well. And as far as the IGU is concerned, I was at their initial organizational meeting with the borough. I think they have really good heads on their shoulders. I'm very pleased with the members that were assigned or that volunteered for those posts and that the mayor assigned. And I think we have a really good group, and I really see positive things coming out of them.
Energy issues are widely seen as the number one issue facing the borough right now. But what would you see as I guess, the next most important issue, and how would you tackle it on the Borough Assembly?
Our next most important issue would be Eielson Air Force Base for sure. People are nervous. They don't know what's going to happen. But I'm actually optimistic about this. I think coming October or November, we're going to hear some good news coming down out of DOD. Of course, ultimately, it is DOD's decision. We know that. As an Army officer, I know that. But I also know that they're going to listen to us. They have been listening to us from the get-go. 7-8 years ago, they suggested closing Eielson down, and we kind of prevented that. So I'm optimistic that we can still have good things for Eielson. If not the F-16s, it'll be the F-35s. Eielson itself is a strategic jewel. We can fly from Eielson over the North Pole and be anywhere in the world within a few hours. That is priceless, and that's something that the military is going to want to keep. Speaking
of Eielson, borough revenues are fairly stable as far as the tax base because they rely on property taxes, which don't usually fluctuate too much from year to year. But if something, catastrophic economically were to happen, such as the departure of the F-16 aggressor squadron, that's over 1,000 people, probably close to 2,000, basically leaving the borough in the space of a very short period of time, which could very well impact that property tax base in a significant negative way. If something like that were to happen, how would you best see the way for the borough to absorb that financial hit and start moving back forward again?
Sure, that could be a possibility, but on the other side of the coin, we also have Anchorage already said, no, we don't want the F-16s here. We don't have the room for them. We don't have the housing for the people. We don't have the airspace for them. We don't want this to happen either. So I'm kind of optimistic that we're not going to go that route. But if we do, other people have suggested a sales tax, for instance. And we've seen sales tax come up numerous times in local elections. It's always been consistently voted down. That's not something that the people want either. And frankly, I think a sales tax is sort of a slippery slope. If you look at New York, for instance, they have a city tax, they have a state tax, you have income tax, and then you have sales tax and property tax. So I think that if we brought in the sales tax, we fall on that slippery slope, and then we'll just introduce other taxes too. So I don't want to see that happen. But we're looking at other plans for Eielson. FedCo, for instance, has been drafting up different projects. In the lower 48, they've made industrial parks out of bases that were being downsized, things of that nature. So there's always different routes that we can go to attract business and things like that.
What would you see as the biggest difference between the way that you would perform your duties and the way that your opponent would if either of you were elected to the Borough Assembly? What would be the biggest difference that voters could see with regard to the way that you did your jobs and the things that you accomplished.
Sure. Well, it's my understanding that he's worked for the school district for a number of years, but I was endorsed by the Fairbanks Education Association. And one thing that concerns me is if he is still working for the school district while he's assigned to the borough post, is he able to vote on certain issues that come before the assembly regarding budget or school bonds or things like that, or does he have to recuse himself from those votes? And I guess that's something that the borough attorney would have to address as well, but I wouldn't have that conflict.
All right, sounds good. Well, I think that's about all the time we have, Janice, but
Thanks,
thank you
Tom.
very much for
Thanks
coming
for having
in.
me.
And for the rest of you, don't go away just yet. We've got Jamie Schwartzwald coming up next with sports.